The wind howled through the broken metal stalls of the alien market, carrying with it the sharp bite of snow and dust, the kind that scraped against skin like tiny knives. Virel walked barefoot on the frozen ground, her long alien robes torn and thin, barely enough to cover her and her child. She was shaking, cold, weak, and hungry, but she didn't stop. Not when her baby whimpered in her arms, not when other traders laughed at her behind their curtains. She had one thing left to trade: a small, soft blanket, the last thing from her destroyed home. She stood at one stall, eyes pleading. "Please, just some broth, anything," she whispered. Her voice cracked from dryness. A fat alien trader glanced at her with disgust. "Nothing's free here," he said. "Blanket's barely worth 1 spoon." She nodded quickly. "1 spoon is fine." But before she could hand it over, a cruel voice chimed in. "Or maybe a different kind of deal," said a tall, gray-skinned male with sharp teeth and cruel eyes. "That blanket won't save your brat, but maybe your body will buy him a warm bed." Laughter rose around her, but Virel didn't cry. She only held her child tighter. Her eyes stared at the ground. Empty and tired, she backed away slowly. Too weak to argue, too broken to fight, the crowd lost interest, and she walked to the edge of the market, where the cold bit harder and silence stretched. She sat under a metal overhang. Curling around her child, the baby was barely breathing. Face pale, lips dry, she tried to warm him with her own skin, whispering an old song from her people, but her voice trembled, and her body gave out. She began to fade. That's when heavy footsteps echoed in the snow. A tall figure in black armor walked past the market gate. Human boots, thick, loud, unfamiliar to the aliens here. He had a rifle on his back, dust on his shoulders, and a pack slung across his chest. The traders watched him carefully. Humans were rare out here, and always dangerous. But Jack wasn't looking at them. His eyes scanned the edges, sharp and focused, until they landed on Huron, the woman and the dying child in her arms. He walked straight toward her. Ignoring the mutters, the threats, the offers, he stopped just a few feet away, crouched down, and opened his pack without a word. From it, he pulled out a protein bar and a small water pouch. Virel blinked at him, her eyes wide. "For me?" she asked, her voice barely a breath. Jack nodded once. "Feed the child first." Her hands shook as she unwrapped the bar. She broke a piece and placed it gently into the baby's mouth. The child sucked weakly, then stronger, and color returned to his face. She gasped, covering her lips with her hand, tears falling silently. "Why?" she asked, looking up at the human. "I have nothing left to give." One of the nearby traders scoffed. "She's yours now, human. You fed her. She's property." The others laughed again. Jack stood slowly, his voice cold and sharp. "She's not property," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "She's under my protection." The laughter stopped. The crowd grew still. Even the wind seemed to pause. Virel looked up at him in disbelief. No one had ever said those words to her, not since her planet fell, not since her people were scattered, not since the soldiers branded her worthless and left her to die. "Why?" she asked again, barely able to speak. Jack didn't smile, didn't explain. He just took off his thick jacket and laid it over her shoulders. "Stay warm," he said. "I have a tent. Follow me if you want shelter." He turned and began to walk, not looking back. Virel stared at his back, at the path in the snow. She could stay here and freeze, or she could follow. Her child stirred in her arms, warm now. Breathing steady, she stood slowly, wrapped in the human's coat, and followed the footprints. One step at a time, behind her, the traders whispered. Some scoffed. Others watched with something close to envy. The alien mother had nothing, no food, no home, no strength yet. Somehow, she had found a protector. And in that frozen market of cruel bargains, that was something no one could buy. The alien trade market faded behind them as Virel followed the human through the snow. Her child was wrapped tight in the human's jacket. Her feet numb from the cold, but something inside her had started to burn again, a small, strange warmth that hadn't been there in a long time. Jack didn't talk much as he walked. His movements were quick but careful. His eyes scanned the surroundings. Always alert, he wasn't just a kind stranger. He moved like a soldier. Someone used to danger, used to war. They reached a small tent made of human survival fabric, hidden between two large metal containers at the edge of the broken outpost. It wasn't fancy, but the heat that came from inside felt like paradise to Virel. Jack opened the flap and nodded. Inside, she hesitated, looking down at her child, then stepped in. The air inside was warm. Almost too warm at first. Her legs gave out, and she sat down on the insulated floor, sighing deeply as she cradled her baby. The tent had only one cot, one heater, and a small corner stacked with sealed human rations. Jack placed his weapon near the door and started working without saying a word. He opened a pack, activated a heater cell, and the smell of warm stew filled the space. Virel's stomach growled so loudly she turned red. Jack noticed but said nothing. He just handed her a steaming container and a spoon. She took it slowly, eyes filled with disbelief. "You don't want anything for this?" she asked, softly. "No price." Jack finally looked at her. "Not everything has a price." Virel shook her head. "That's not true where I come from," she said. "Everything costs something, especially kindness." He sat down on the floor, leaning against the tent wall. "Then maybe you've only met the wrong people." She fed her child first again, tiny spoonful by tiny spoonful. The baby ate eagerly now, color returning to his cheeks. His small hand grabbed hers, as if asking her to stay alive, to keep fighting. Virel wiped her own tears, hoping the human didn't see, but Jack did, and he said quietly, "What's his name?" She hesitated. "Oren," she whispered. "It means hope." "In the old language of my people," Jack nodded. "Then it suits him." They sat in silence for a long time, the wind howling outside, but the tent warm and still. After a while, Virel spoke again. This time slower, carefully. You don't act like the others, humans." Jack asked. "No," she said. "Soldiers, traitors, men." Jack gave a tired smile. "I've seen enough suffering to know what it does to people. Makes them cruel. Makes them forget that others feel pain too." Virel watched him carefully, her voice lowered. "I was the mate of a rebel," she said. "He tried to fight back when the invaders came. And he died for it." Jack didn't interrupt. He just listened, like no one ever had. "They burned our home, took our names," she continued. "The mark on my neck. It means I belong to a traitor. So even my own people turned away." She pulled her collar aside, showing the scar just above her shoulder burned into her skin. Jack's face didn't change. He didn't look at her with pity or judgment. He just said, "Scars aren't who you are." Virel looked down, the food forgotten in her hands. "They are. Where I come from," he leaned forward slightly. "Then maybe it's time you come from somewhere else." Her breath caught in her chest. She wanted to believe that, but she couldn't. Not yet. Suddenly, a noise outside rustling, like something scraping metal. Jack stood up fast, grabbing his rifle. He motioned for silence. Virel covered Oren and held her breath. Jack stepped out of the tent, silent and swift. His boots crunched the snow only once before vanishing into the shadows. Virel waited, heart racing. Clutching her child, she heard shouting Jack's voice and another, harsh one, then a loud thud. Something heavy falling. Moments later, Jack returned. Snow in his hair, rifle still warm. "It was nothing," he said simply. "Just a thief. Probably looking for food." Virel stared at him. You risked your life. Jack shrugged. He wasn't after me. He was too close to the tent. Her eyes widened. You mean? He was after us. Jack nodded slowly. There are people out there who see weakness and think it's permission. He sat down again, his voice lower now. I don't let people like that win. Silence filled the tent again. But it wasn't empty. Now it was heavy with meaning. Virel looked at her child, then at Jack, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel like prey. She felt seen, protected, maybe even safe, and that feeling, more than the food or the warmth, made her heart beat again. Maybe not everything had a price, after all. The heater hummed softly inside the tent, casting a warm glow across the small space. Outside, the wind beat against the fabric like a wild drum, but inside, there was calm. Virel sat with her legs crossed beside her sleeping child, watching. The human who had saved them both, Jack, was cleaning his rifle with slow, practiced hands. His face was quiet, serious, marked by a small scar across his left cheek. He hadn't said much since throwing the would-be thief into the snow earlier. But the silence between them didn't feel cold. Virel finally spoke, her voice soft. You were a soldier, weren't you? Jack nodded, not looking up. Long time ago, she tilted her head slightly. You still carry the weight like it's fresh. Jack gave a small smile. Hard to forget when you carry memories on your back. Virel looked down at her hands, fingers scarred and rough. I carry them too, she said. But my memories? They scream at night. Jack paused in his work, then placed his rifle aside. He pulled a small metal cup from his bag, poured warm water into it, and handed it to her. Drink, you need strength. She took it with both hands, grateful. When I was a child, she began, my people believed that stars could hear your wishes. Jack leaned back, folding his arms. Did any answer? She laughed quietly. No, but I kept wishing anyway. She looked at him now, eyes soft. What about you? Did your stars listen? Jack looked up at the roof of the tent, like he was trying to see through it. I stopped asking them a long time ago, he said, but I used to believe. I really did. The silence that followed wasn't empty, was filled with old pain. Virel pulled her sleeve down, revealing a burn mark across her arm. This one, she said, was from when they dragged me out of the rebel camp. I had my child in my arms, but they didn't care. They threw us into a freight ship like garbage. Jack didn't flinch, didn't look away. He only said, I've seen what war does to people on both sides. She nodded. But it feels worse when it's your own people who turn on you. They didn't care that my mate died protecting them. To them, I was just a reminder of failure. Jack's jaw clenched. Some people can't face their shame, so they throw it onto others. Virel watched him for a moment, then pointed to the scar on his cheek, and that one. Jack touched it gently. Friendly fire, he said simply. A rookie panicked during a raid, nearly shot me through the face. Her eyes widened. You forgave him. He nodded. Had to. He couldn't forgive himself anyway. Virel looked down again, holding the cup close. You're not what I expected from a human. Jack chuckled softly. Is that a good thing? She smiled faintly. Yes, I think it is. The tent was warm, but outside. Something shifted in the shadows. Virel's ears twitched slightly. Her species had sharp hearing and she turned her head. Jack noticed immediately. He grabbed his rifle again and signaled for silence. Then they both heard a faint crunch of snow just outside the tent. Virel reached out instinctively, pulling her child closer. Jack stood and moved to the flap, opening it just a crack. Another figure, smaller than the one earlier, was sneaking through the snow. This one carrying a blade. Jack didn't hesitate. He stepped out quietly, moving like a ghost across the snow. Within seconds, there was a low grunt and the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Virel waited, breath held, until the flap opened again, and Jack returned. brushing snow from his sleeves. "He's not coming back," he said calmly. Virel exhaled, her body shaking slightly. "Why are they coming after us?" Jack sat back down, setting his rifle beside him. "Because you're alone. Or at least they think you are." He looked at her, firm now. "But you're not alone anymore." Virel's lips parted slightly. Her heart beat faster, not out of fear, but something else, something strange and unfamiliar. Trust, maybe. She looked down at her sleeping child, then back at Jack. "I don't know what I can offer you," she whispered. "I have nothing." Jack leaned forward, placing a hand over hers, strong and steady. "You've already offered something," he said. "You let me be here, with you. That means more than you think." Tears formed in her eyes again, but she didn't wipe them away this time. She let them fall silently that night, as Oren slept between them and the stars above remained cold and distant. Two broken souls sat inside a small human tent on a dying alien world, sharing warmth, sharing pain, and, for the first time in years, sharing hope. The night was dark, but not quiet. Strange sounds echoed from the distant hills, crackling winds, broken metal creaking, the low growl of machines that never fully died. Inside the tent, Virel finally drifted into a light sleep. Her baby tucked against her chest, Jack remained awake. Sitting with his back to the tent wall, his rifle across his lap, he had been a soldier long enough to know peace was never free. Especially out here. This part of the galaxy was filled with desperate people, some dangerous, some simply starving, and some who didn't care about right or wrong anymore. Around midnight, the heater flickered once, just a small shift. But it made Jack's eyes narrow. He stood silently, careful not to wake the others, and slipped out of the tent. Snow crunched beneath light feet in the distance, faster this time. Closer. Jack crouched near the side of the tent and waited. A shadow moved toward the front flap, small and quick, not a fighter, but someone used to sneaking. The figure reached the flap and slowly lifted it, unaware that Jack was right behind him. Inside, Virel stirred, her mother instincts stronger. Then sleep. Her eyes opened just in time to see a hand reaching for Oren. She froze in horror, unable to scream. But before the hand could touch the child, a strong arm wrapped around the intruder's throat from behind and dragged him out of the tent like a rag doll. Jack threw the small alien thief onto the snow with such force that the ground shook. The thief, a scrawny creature with long arms and pale skin, gasped for air. "What were you thinking?" Jack growled, voice low and deadly. I wasn't going to hurt them," the thief cried. "Just wanted the baby's clothes. It's cold. Please, please." Virel stepped out of the tent, holding her baby tightly, her eyes locked on the thief, face pale with fear and rage. "You were going to take my child," she whispered. "You would have let him die out here." The thief looked at her, then at Jack, trembling. "I'm hungry. I'm freezing. I haven't eaten in days," he said. "No one gives anything unless you take it." Jack stepped forward, his boots crunching hard into the snow. "You picked the wrong tent," he said, lifting the thief with one hand by the collar. Virel could see it in Jack's eyes. He was ready to kill. There was no mercy in his grip, just cold fury. "Please." The thief begged, "Don't kill me. I'm just trying to live." Jack didn't answer. He stared into the thief's eyes, then suddenly dropped him, letting him fall hard into the snow. "You get one warning," Jack said, voice like steel. "Next time you come near her or the child, I'll bury you out here and no one will even ask your name." The thief scrambled up and ran off into the darkness, disappearing into the snow-covered ruins. Virel stood silently, her child whimpering softly in her arms. She looked at Jack with wide eyes, her breath coming in quick gasps. You stopped him," she said. "You didn't even hesitate." Jack turned to her, his eyes softer now. No one touches what I protect. He said simply, not while I breathe. She looked down at the snow where the thief had fallen. Then, back at Jack, they'll keep coming, she said. This place. It's filled with people like that. Jack nodded. I know. Virel took a step closer, her voice trembling. Then why stay? Why keep helping me? Jack met her eyes. Because you're worth helping, he said. And so is he, nodding toward the child. Virel lowered her head, overwhelmed. No one's ever said that to me before, she whispered. They went back inside the tent. Jack checking the heater and supplies again, while Virel wrapped her child back in the human jacket. Her hands still trembled, but something else was growing inside her now, something stronger than fear. It was the beginning of trust, not just in Jack, but in herself, later that night. As the tent settled and Oren fell back asleep, Virel sat quietly near the heater, watching the flames flicker. She turned to Jack. You fought for me like I mattered. Even though you don't know me, Jack looked over, his voice low but steady. I've seen too many good people fall because no one stood up for them, he said. Not this time. She nodded slowly, pressing her child closer to her heart. Thank you, she said, her voice small but full of meaning. For not treating me like a thing or a tool or a price, Jack simply replied. You're not a thing. You're a mother, and mothers are warriors in their own way. The wind outside howled again, but inside the small human tent, there was safety, there was strength, and there was the start of something neither of them expected. Hope. By morning, the wind had died, but the tension in the air was heavy. Virel stepped outside the tent with her child tucked close to her chest, her breath clouded in the cold, and her eyes scanned the trade camp from a distance. Something had changed. More patrols moved between tents, carrying weapons to clean to be from the slums. Traders huddled in corners, whispering. There was news spreading, fast rumors about a human who fought off a thief, who guarded an alien mother like she was royalty. Some thought it was noble. Others thought it was foolish. Jack stepped up beside her, rubbing his arms to chase off the chill. Something's going on, he said, voice low. Too many eyes on us. Virel nodded. This market. It's ruled by a council, 5 leaders from different species. They control the food, the medicine, everything. Jack narrowed his eyes. Sounds like a gang with better chairs. They are, Virel said. And when someone disrupts their order, they make an example. That afternoon, a loud horn echoed across the ruined outpost. Traders stepped out of their tents and stalls, whispering again. A tall alien in shimmering gold armor stood on a raised platform in the center of the market. His voice echoed through a speaker. By decision of the council, we now begin the trials of hunger. Virel's face went pale. No, not this, she whispered. Jack looked at her sharply. What is it? She held Oren tighter, her voice shaking. It's a contest. They do it when food supplies run low, or when they want to distract people from corruption. Anyone can enter, but if you lose, you're banned from the trade zone for a full cycle. Jack frowned, and the winner gets food, medical packs, shelter tokens. She said bitterly, but it's a trap. They use it to get rid of the weak. A list of names appeared on a nearby screen, randomly chosen by the council. Jack's name was on it. Guess I'm popular, Jack muttered. Pulling on his gloves, Virel grabbed his arm. Don't go, she said. You don't understand. It's not fair. It's not even logical. They mix combat puzzles, endurance. They change the rules mid-game. Jack gave her a small smile. I've survived worse than rigged games. She looked into his eyes, terrified. You don't have to prove anything. Jack touched her shoulder gently. I'm not doing it for pride, he said. I'm doing it because you and Oren need food and protection. If I win, we get both. She tried to argue, but he was already walking away. Rifle slung over his back, calm and focused. The crowd gathered near the center of the market, where the trials began. Participants stood in a circle while council guards passed out strange tools and instructions in different alien languages. 1. Survive the maze. A massive temporary arena opened. Shaped like a twisting labyrinth of metal scraps, each contestant had 5 minutes to reach the center. Traps were hidden inside, and creatures too. Jack waited for the buzzer, then sprinted inside. His soldier instincts took over, checking corners, listening for shifts in air pressure. Stepping where others wouldn't, he passed the first trap, leaped over a spring-loaded spike plate, and disabled a drone with a swift strike of his boot. Behind him, others screamed, some trapped, some burned, one even vanishing into a pit of mist. Jack didn't slow down. He moved like he had done this 100 times. And maybe he had, in some form, in some war, at the center. He found a flag, grabbed it, and emerged just in time, face bruised but alive. The crowd gasped. Council members whispered to one another. Round 2. Combat pairing. Jack was paired against a 4-armed alien with blade-covered arms and bloodlust in its eyes. The creature charged without warning, slashing with fury. Jack rolled, dodged, countered with speed and skill. He didn't try to overpower the alien. He outsmarted it. Using its momentum, he flipped it into a wall, then disarmed it with a move. So fast, the audience fell silent. The final blow came with a strike to the alien's pressure point, non-lethal but stunning. The council was furious. They had expected him to die. Final round, choice or chance. Jack stood alone before a spinning wheel. Each wedge showed a symbol. Some meant safety, some meant death. The leader of the council stepped forward, smiling coldly. "Spin, human," he said, "or walk away with nothing." Jack stared at the wheel, then turned away. "I don't gamble with lives," he said. "You want a show? Try honesty for once." The crowd murmured. Then suddenly, a shout rang out. "It's rigged." Someone yelled, "The human passed every trial. Let him take the prize." Others joined, shouting louder, "Let him have it. He earned it." The council had no choice. Under pressure, they handed Jack a sealed crate of supplies, food, blankets, heaters, medicine. He carried it back to the tent with slow steps, bruises forming on his arms. Virel ran to him, eyes wide with fear, then relief. "You came back," she whispered. He set the crate down, breathing hard. "Told you I would." She looked at him like he was something more than human now, to her. He was a hero, and that night, as she prepared warm food for her child for the first time in weeks, she knew Jack had not just survived the trials. He had beaten the system with honor. The small tent was warmer than ever, but Virel couldn't stop trembling, not from cold, but from fear. Jack was asleep for the first time in days, his bruised body stretched on the floor next to his weapon. His face was calm, but his arms still twitched with pain. She sat beside him in silence, her child sleeping peacefully in her arms. The food he had won was packed neatly in crates now, enough to last weeks. They were safe for now. But Virel knew the truth. The council wouldn't forget. Jack had humiliated them in front of the entire camp. He had exposed their lies, won their games, and left with the crowd cheering him. That kind of defiance always came with a cost, and she was that cost. She looked down at her child, pressing her lips gently to his forehead, then stared at Jack, still breathing heavily from the wounds he had taken for them. In her mind, the decision had already been made. She could not stay. Quietly, with careful fingers, she folded Jack's jacket and placed it near his side. She packed only a few things, just enough food for 2 days and a cloth to carry Orin. Her heart ached, but her resolve stayed strong. If she left now, the council would stop watching him. He could leave this place without a target on his back. He could return to whatever world he belonged to. She reached for the tent, flat but stopped when she heard his voice, low and tired. "Where are you going?" Virel froze, her back still turned. "I'm not going far," she whispered. Just away." Jack sat up slowly, pain flashing across his face. "Why?" She closed her eyes. "Because I'm dangerous to be around. I've brought you. Nothing but trouble. You almost died because of me." Jack stood, his steps uneven. "I didn't almost die because of you," he said. "I fought because I chose to." She finally turned, eyes full of tears. "You don't understand. They'll keep coming. The council will punish you for protecting me." "Let them try," Jack said firmly. "I'm not afraid of them, but I am." She cried, "Not for myself, for you." "You don't owe me anything, Jack. You were kind when no one else was. And I can't let you suffer more because of me." Jack stepped closer, now only a few feet away. His eyes were tired, but steady. "You think this is suffering?" He said, "You think protecting you is a burden, Virel? You saved me too." She shook her head, not understanding. "I have nothing, no name, no future, just this child in pain." Jack pointed to the crates beside them. "That's food. You helped me win. That's a child you fought to keep alive when everyone else gave up. That's strength, not weakness." Her lips trembled. "Then why does it hurt so much to stay?" Jack's voice softened. "Because you've never had a place to stay before. Not really. Not one where someone looked at you and saw more than your scars." Virel looked at the ground, holding back a sob. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered. Jack stepped forward and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I don't want anything from you." He said, "I want something with you." She looked up at him, stunned. "I want a future where this tent isn't just a hiding place," he said, "where this child grows up safe, where you sleep without fear, and where we build something not because we have to, but because we choose to." Virel couldn't speak. Her throat tightened with emotion. Jack knelt in front of her, reaching toward Oren. The baby opened his eyes and stared at him silently, then reached out with one small hand. Jack touched it gently. "If you'll let me, I can be part of this." Family Virel's knees gave out and she sat on the floor, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Why?" She whispered again, "Why me?" Jack smiled softly. "Because you never gave up, not even when you had nothing." There was silence between them now. But it wasn't empty, was filled with something stronger than words. Trust, hope, the beginning of something new. She nodded slowly, and in that moment, she wasn't just a refugee, or a traitor's widow, or a forgotten alien. She was a mother, a survivor, and now, someone who was loved outside. The cold wind still blew through the trade camp, but inside the tent, warmth returned not from the heater, but from the choice made between them. Virel stayed, and for the first time in her life, she stayed because she wanted to. The sun rose pale and weak over the frozen trade camp, casting long blue shadows across the snow-covered ruins. Virel stood outside the tent, her child in her arms, the wind tugging gently at her clothes. Jack stood beside her, now healed enough to walk without stumbling. His rifle hung across his back, but his expression was calm. Today was the day they would leave. The decision hadn't come easy. But after what happened during the trials, and after the council's quiet threats, Jack knew staying here was no longer safe. They had to move, not just to survive, but to truly start living again. Virel looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and courage. "Are you sure they'll let us pass the gate?" Jack nodded. "They don't have a choice. The Human Aid Outpost is sending a shuttle. Sent the request last night, classified it as humanitarian extraction." She blinked, surprised. "You filed a request for me?" Jack gave a soft smile. "Not for you, for us." Before they left, Jack made one final stop at the council hall. Not for permission, but for confrontation. He entered alone, while Virel waited outside with Oren. The council members sat like stone statues. pretending to ignore him, but their eyes followed his every move. "I'm leaving this place." Jack said, voice firm, "and I'm taking Virel and her child with me." The alien in gold armor leaned forward, his voice smooth and fake. "She has no status, no papers. She's a refugee, unclaimed." Jack placed a datapad on the table. "Not anymore. Here's the record, signed by the Human Aid Alliance. She's under my protection and part of my family unit," the council muttered. But one voice snapped out. "She's nothing. Her name was stripped. You can't give it back." Jack leaned forward, eyes like steel. "Then I'll give her a new one. She'll carry my name. If that's what it takes." The room went silent. Jack turned and walked out without another word. Virel saw his face as he exited, tired but proud. "You did it," she said, breathless. He nodded. "They won't touch you again." Later that afternoon, the sky cracked open with the sound of engines. A human shuttle, marked with Alliance logos, hovered down from the clouds and landed near the camp. Traders and outcasts gathered to watch as Virel, holding her child close, stepped into the snow alongside the human who had once been a stranger but now stood like her shield. The guards didn't stop them. Some even stepped back with quiet respect. Virel glanced at the old metal posts of the market, the filthy banners, the frost-covered cages where others had once begged like she had. She didn't cry as she walked away. She didn't even look back, because this time, she wasn't running. She was walking toward something, not away, inside the shuttle. The warmth returned, stronger than anything she had known before. Oren giggled in her arms as the engines roared to life. A young human pilot turned around from the controls and smiled. "Ma'am, do you have a name for the child?" "For our records." Virel hesitated, looking at her son, then at Jack. Then she spoke clearly. "His name is Oren Solas." "Solas was my mate's name," she said, "but he carries it forward with hope." The pilot nodded, then asked gently, "And yours?" Virel looked at Jack, her heart beat fast, not with fear, but with something deeper. Jack didn't speak, he just offered his hand. She took it and whispered, "Virel Solas. For now," then added with a small smile, "Maybe later I'll take another name." Jack's grip tightened slightly, and he smiled back. "I'll be waiting." As the shuttle rose into the sky, leaving behind the broken market and the bitter snow, Virel closed her eyes. The stars above no longer looked cold or unreachable. She remembered what she used to believe as a child, that stars could hear your wishes. And maybe they had. Not with magic, but with something better. With choice. With courage, and with one human who saw her not as a price, not as a burden, but as someone worth fighting for. Asterisk.